Alrighty. Good morning, good evening, and good afternoon, chat. Not that there's really a chat all this time. Um, Unfortunately, since last night, my internet's kind of been acting a little funky. So, unfortunately, there's not really gonna be all that much of a chat this stream. Um, we're getting it fixed. We're working on it. I'm working on it. um, but yeah, so unlike my other streams where they're usually live, unfortunately today's gonna have to be pre-recorded. That said, it is August 9th, 2025, at about, I'm gonna say, mid-afternoon. Sun is shining, birds are singing, it's a little hot out, but, you know. Anyway, so let me put some music on first just to lighten the mood just a hair. It's just a little something I like to put on, mostly for myself. But I feel like you guys should get some time with some of my music as well. Anyway, so, what's been going on with me? Um, well, unfortunately, I was not doing a stream at all last week. I was with my lovely Borb. Spent the whole weekend with them. Friday, they took me out to get sushi. And then Saturday, we went to go see The Bad Guys 2. Fantastic movie. If you liked the first one, it feels like, it feels like only a week's gone by since the first one. Um, Absolutely fantastic. And a little bit of furry bait if you're into that kind of thing. And then after that, my lovely Borb also took me to what's called K-Pot, which is where the gimmick is you cook the food, but you cook it there right at your table. It's mostly Korean, a little bit of Chinese, a little bit of Japanese, but the most important thing is it's good food and it makes you full. Pardon me. What else? I do have a couple of other decks that I guess I would like to show off. But the main thing that I want to focus on, at least for right now, is the little lesson that we're going to do. I also wanted to go over with everybody, not that really anyone's here right now, but I also wanted to go over our schedule for these streams, which I think now that I've got, about 3 or 4 under my belt, I think we have a pretty consistent schedule. Basically, we start with a little pre-show prologue, let everybody come in, what have you. Then when the actual stream starts, which I like to be very punctual with my time. So if I say the stream will start at 1 or 1:30, it's going to start at 1 or 1:30. Eastern Standard Time, of course. Depending on where you live in the world, most of the time, I usually start on the dot. It's always kind of been a thing with me where, you have to start as soon as you say you do. No ifs, ands, or buts. So I'll usually start on time. Kind of, I don't want to say introduce myself, because, I have, at the very least, as of this recording, there are 2 videos up already, but I'm getting ahead of myself. So I'll usually do a free tarot lesson for people, for really anybody who's interested. I also take a little bit of a break, usually about 5 or 10 minutes, nothing super crazy, just something for me to get a water break, put the fan on, put the AC on, that kind of thing. And then I'll go over anything new in regards to my tarot practice, which I do have a couple of new things. But after that, then I will usually wrap it up with a reading. And today's reading, the Querent actually couldn't be here. He messaged me ahead of time saying he couldn't show up anyway, so it's not that big a deal. But as long as I get this recorded, which is why I'm recording this ahead of time, it should be all good. Now then, for today's lesson, so you might have noticed, at least with the last video, I focused on two cards, the Magician and the High Priestess. And the only major difference between the two was that their methods of literally working their magic are entirely opposite of each other. This time, however, I almost would argue it's the inverse. Their gender differences are kind of what makes them unique about each card. That also said, I'm going to show examples of how we spill gender on the floor and rub it around like paint or Play-Doh. So, again, you also have to keep in mind this deck was made in the very, very late 1800s, early 1900s. So this was back at a time where, at least in most of the English-speaking Western world, unfortunately, gender was still a very concrete thing. But thankfully, this is the last time we're doing binary gendered cards, as when we get to, I want to say the next three or four, when we get to those cards, it kind of fuses those gendered concepts together. But, if the hint wasn't enough already, we are doing the Empress and the Emperor. Oh, excuse me. Oh yeah, that's another thing. See, this is how you know I'm a boomer. The camera, I don't know why, but it just decided it wanted to flip itself. So now everything, I have to reflip everything so everything is at the proper ornamentation. Anyway, so that also said, I'm gonna have to make some changes around here. No, I'm just playing. So, that said, with the Empress and the Emperor, at least in terms of tarot, they embody the divine feminine and the divine masculine. These are cards number 3 and number 4 in the major arcana. Again, I know we have the disclaimer down there, but another big fat disclaimer. I'm not great with numerology. I am primarily a very visual person, so unless I see a number that keeps repeating over and over again, if I get like a 3 of Cups and then a 6 of Pentacles and then a 9 of Wands, I'm probably not going to notice that as much as I would the imagery. But again, that's kind of the beauty of tarot. You can, there's a million different ways to read and learn tarot, and there's no wrong way to come to the conclusion, because we all kind of come to the same conclusion. But anyway, so, what makes these two similar is that these two are essentially rulers, and they're rulers of, I don't want to say the same domain, because technically it is, but they are ruling over different aspects of it. Unlike the High Priestess and Magician, where they were doing the same thing in very different ways, these two are doing the same thing in two very different domains. We'll start with the Empress because in my opinion, femme people should be first. So this is card number 3, and she represents the mother. And it can be literal, but it most of the time doesn't usually. This card can represent someone who is a caretaker or a parent, or someone who is very maternal. Someone who, like, if you have a mom friend of the group, this would be the card that comes up. And there's a couple of ways that this is portrayed. First and foremost, you'll notice at the bottom, there is all of this abundant grain. And grain, I don't want to say it's like the lifeblood of humanity, but it's kind of the first thing humans ever really harvested that, like, wasn't fruit or vegetables. As far as I'm aware, if anybody wants to fact check me on that, please go right ahead. I love learning new things. But Pardon me. But her domain is nature. I'm pretty sure we call it Mother Nature specifically because of this card. You'll notice this lush fields of grain. There's all of these trees in the background. And another thing that most people probably don't notice is that there is this element of water. Now, again, you'll see this in later cards as well, but whenever water shows up, it's representative of the Suit of Cups. And the Suit of Cups represents emotion. So the fact that this waterfall is even here at all, at least in my opinion, states that, yes, this is a very, the Empress is very productive, very, I'm not going to say literal, but very tangible, but she also has some emotion backing her. She cares. She gives a care about those who respect her. Again, and not just with nature on the ground, but also nature on the sky. You'll notice that she's holding her scepter, not only her scepter up to the sky, but her crown also has 12 stars on top of it. I've, under tutelage of more professional readers, I've been told that these 12 stars also represent the zodiac. So, again, it's that theme, it's that motif of as above and so below. She doesn't just rule nature on the ground, but she also rules nature in the sky. Where do you think the weather comes from? That also said, she's in a very relaxed position. I'd almost make the argument that she really or maybe not necessarily enjoys her job, but she does it a little more carefree. She does it, she's not as strict. She's a little bit more laid back. This is the mom back in the 80s where you tell them, "Mom, I'm going outside and riding bikes with my friends." And she says, "Okay, honey, just come back before dark." But one thing that I didn't really think about until I really sat with this card is that this heart is technically a shield, meaning, at least in my opinion, that she knows things about combat. Granted, things that are more defensive, more protective, more rather than being offensive. She knows how to care for others. And on the battlefield, well, what better way to portray that than with the shield? Pardon me. Anyway, but you'll also notice on the shield this symbol. Now, if you know anything about astrology, or I'd even take it astronomy, you'll know that that is the symbol for Venus. And Venus, at least in astrology, represents the full 100% divine feminine. That's kind of the reason that this card, that's kind of the reason why this card is the way that it is. It is, it is the divine mother, it is the protector, it is someone, and again, it's not so much protecting. Like, she is able to do it if she wants to, but it's more so about caring for those she protects, because protection is more than just defenses. It's catering to one's needs. It is watching over other people. It is making sure everyone's happy and healthy. And, especially, I don't want to say in this day and age, but especially for at least the past, 20, 30 years, that's kind of what things have been about anyway. Again, she can be combative, but that's not her main role. But if she needs it, it's there. Now, we're going to move on to the Emperor. Now, the Emperor, again, he serves, I would almost make the argument that he serves an identical function. But he still rules over a domain. It's just that rather than nature and I almost say chaos, he represents law, order, and society. And you can, and, you know, and again, similar to the Empress, he's also been in a lot of combat. Looks like my camera wants to, there we go. Perfect, perfect. Um, there we are. The Emperor is about law. He's about structure. He's about maintaining order. Rather than everyone and everything just instinctively knowing what to do, he's the one who decrees to everyone, "Hey, I'm the king. I'm the emperor. You need to do what I say or else you will be violating my divine rightful order." And again, on the surface, that does sound like a bad thing. I wouldn't blame you. But he's the divine masculine, where the Empress is the feminine elements of earth and water. He is of fire and air. Now, air you can't really see unless you look at a tornado or something. But with the Emperor and the theme of fire, I think that fits in really well for him. Especially, actually, come to think of it, he almost kind of looks like the King of Swords. But we'll get to King of Swords in another stream. This is also another thing of interest, and that's how you know this stuff is pointlessly gendered. This card is also the first major arcana card that can also symbolize a sign in the Western Zodiac. Now, I don't know if you've been noticing for the past couple of streams, I have this very, very lovely centerpiece tablecloth. It was actually from Spirit Halloween, but there's all these wacky, crazy signs on them. Yes, I know one of them is a broom. There's a couple of stars, but there's one that looks like an H. There's another one that looks like a 2. Those are all Those are all zodiac signs from Western astrology. Now, there's different kinds of astrology. There's different kinds of methods to read astrology. I know there's like a Chinese system. There's several. I can't think of them right now. But at least within Western civilization, most people have always kind of gravitated towards, I would almost say, not necessarily ancient astrology, but that's what our system is based. Or I'm not going to say ours. That sounds really gross. The Western system. Actually, I shouldn't even be saying Western. I don't. We'll call it the. We'll call it the original. No. All right. Well, I'll workshop it. But the point being, this is the first sign in the zodiac, which is the sign of Aries. Now, how do you know this is Aries? Well, it's pretty simple. There's, I almost want to say there's 2.5, 3 different clues that kind of clue you in on this. Number 1, the color red. Now, again, I don't need to tell you this, but red is associated with fire. And astrology incorporates the elements as well. There are about 3 signs for every one element, with the 4 elements being, water, fire, earth, and air. So again, you could make the argument that, yeah, okay, his robe is red and it's orange and it's very fiery, yeah, but like, how do I know this is not a Leo? Number 2, Aries are known to be very headstrong, very headfast. And aside from the Empress, I don't really know any other cards that have a crown this detailed, and I'd almost argue that ornate. It's a little hard to see. There we go. Also, fun fact, each part of his crown actually represents the 4 suits. The pentacles, swords, cups, and wands. But he is the ruler of those 4 kings, which again makes sense given he's an emperor. And then finally, you'll notice on his throne, ram heads. And what is Aries what is Aries represented by mostly in astrology, but the sign of the ram? Ooh, okay, there we go. It's autofocusing. That said, you'll also notice that this guy, like, you don't disagree with this guy. With the Empress, yeah, you can kind of make a little bit of leeway, but with the Emperor, no, forget it. Everything here is is literally made of stone. I'd almost argue cement, but I don't think cement in and of itself is that old. I'm not sure how old cement is, but the point being is this is clearly a throne made and carved out of stone. And aside from the ram's heads, this is not very ornate. This is not very detailed, and there's not really a whole lot going on. This guy, he's in the mountains, and when you have something as big as a mountain, that's in no uncertain terms, and no pun intended, pretty freaking concrete. The other thing of note is that this guy is not only old, like, you don't grow a beard that long in a week. You just can't. Unless you have, like, crazy testosterone. But again, that further serves to the theme of the Emperor. But he's also wearing all this armor underneath his robes. Again, I make the argument that it's an homage to Ares, the Greek god of war, but it's more akin to the Knights Templar, the medieval era. Oh, excuse me. Again, he's very wizened. He's been in combat before. And the fact that there is no one else in this card leads me to believe that he knows how to put all this armor on himself. Do you know how hard it is to put armor, especially plate armor like that, on by yourself? At every Ren Fair I've been to, I've never seen someone get plate armor on themselves without needing help from an assistant or a squire or what have you. So I'm leading to believe that he's managed to put this armor on himself. And again, it's less of likability and more of begrudging respect, at least with the Emperor. So, that said, what I would like to do, again, unfortunately, these cards are very gendered. But that said, even if you have a regular old Rider-Waite Smith, you can still have someone who's very hyper-masculine, and if they care for somebody, or if they care for someone, whether it be a child or a spouse or a family or even a pet, what have you, the Empress could still come out for them. And likewise, if you have somebody who's very AFAB, or if you have someone who's AFAB, but whether they may be transmasculine, or they could be the most feminine person in the world, and you could still have the Emperor come out for them. Gender is stupid. Gender is a social construct, and it's kind of the one minor thing that I have a little bit of an issue with the tarot, with the original Rider-Waite Smith as a whole. But again, these were made in like the very late 1800s, early 1900s. So gender is, it's got to be a theme somewhere sooner or later. Anyway, so let's take a look at some examples that kind of throw gender out the window and make it cooler. Starting with everybody's personal favorite, the Sonic the Hedgehog Amy Rose's Tarot. And with this version of the Empress and Emperor, we have the Virtuous Heart. And as you can see, even though this is meant to be a very feminine card, that is clearly a giant hammer. And anybody who knows at least the Amy Rose lore knows for a fact that this is indeed her hammer. I would almost make the argument that, if there was any character who would belong as the Empress, it would be her. Canonically, this is her deck. But let's take a little reading from the guidebook, because I have it here and I wanted to talk about it. If I can find the right page, all the better. Let's see. Ooh, excuse me. Okay. All right. So, card number 3, Virtuous Heart, the Empress. Nurture the world around you, and it will nurture you in return. Taking care of those in your life not only strengthens your bonds of love and friendship, it also strengthens you as well. When something threatens all that, don't hesitate to stand up for what's right. And then, when it's drawn upright, you are beautiful just the way you are. Take care of yourself and those around you. Nurture the good things in your life. Get started on that gardening project and be ready to reap a bountiful crop soon. Lots of stuff is growing on. Tee-hee. And then, for when it is upside down, you need to stand on your own 2 feet. And there's nothing wrong with asking for help from time to time, but not for every little thing. You may be doing fine, but this card is warning you it's at the expense of everyone around you. Step back and re-examine what you're doing and what everyone else is doing for you. So again, like I said earlier with the Empress, it's not just the fact that she's divine feminine, and it's not just about I hate saying this word. It's not just about feminine duties. It's about caring for other people. And I think this card perfectly incorporates that. Even with my own knowledge from the original Sonic lore, as far as I can remember, Amy doesn't really use her hammer all that much. And when she does, it's usually for a legitimately good reason. But again, her main thing, at least that I can remember, is, caring for her friends, caring about the people who she, I don't want to say loves and admires, but caring about her found family, and caring about, it's not just bringing out the hammer. It's bringing out other, I would even make the argument, it's bringing out other tools that can help keep everybody happy, safe, and healthy. So that's pretty much my interpretation of this. Again, it can be sort of feminine given by the heart in the background, but it doesn't have to be. And that's kind of what they did and the symbology for this is what I really like with what they did with the Amy Rose Tarot. None of the major arcana shows any of the characters as they are. We won't see them until probably the court cards, if that. And even still, those are just them. These major arcana cards more so represent aspects and major overarching themes, which again is kind of the point of the major arcana. It's all about archetypes, my friend. Now, in lieu of the Emperor, we have, what is the name of this? Monstrum Machina, which, if I know my Latin, that means monster in the machine. Now, I was a little curious as to why they chose a silhouette of Eggman in some sort of like cyberspace type background for this. And then I got to thinking about it in regards to the regular Emperor. He is the antithesis of nature, and in order for people to do the things that he wants, he needs people in some sort of society. Enter Eggman, someone who knows how to build robots with their own 2 hands, and not only knows how to do that, but also knows how to build robots who know how to build robots. Well, you keep piling them on and on and on, and then sooner or later you end up with an entire sky fleet like in Sonic Heroes. Again, with my little lore that I do know, this card, at least to me, signifies the scene in Sonic Adventure 2 where he's come to make an announcement. Shadow the Hedgehog is no, I'm just kidding, I'm not going to finish that. No, he makes an announcement that he's going to blow up the moon. And he's going to do it in 24 hours unless his demands are met. And how does he do it? With this giant, enormous, literally half the size of a Death Star. And of course, it's what, how else does it look? But looks like him, too. I would almost make the argument that he would probably be the Emperor in reverse, but I would classify more that that would be somebody who rather, like, doesn't want the job of being an emperor. Someone who unexpectedly came into it and either they're not ready for it. But with Dr. Eggman, no. Hell no. This guy is like 53 years old. He's got like a 300 IQ. And, he's still making mistakes and getting bamboozled by a couple of anthropomorphic animals. But that said, let me read the book to see what their general interpretation is. Alright, so let's see. A powerful force is present and it demands respect. It can bring about order through its authority and take control of a wild situation. It can be nurturing if you tinker with it, or it can be oppressive. And then upright. Things are going to work out. You'll have a handle on all the craziness going on. It will come to order, and you'll get the guidance and support you need right now. Listen to your heart, but let your head be the guide this time. Find the balance between what you feel is right and what you know is right. Yeah, I do kind of agree. It kind of paints Eggman in a little more of a sympathetic light, but I've always seen him as the bad guy. He's been the bad guy since the first game. Now for Upside Down. The rules are stifling. You have no room to do things your own way. You're lacking the warmth and support you need right now. You may feel trapped or alone, which is all the more reason to be proactive. It's time to believe in yourself. Now I kind of take that as not necessarily you, but the circumstances around you. And especially if this card is out, 9 times out of 10, it's probably going to be somebody who's very authoritative. Again, that classic Eggman of, I've come to make an announcement, I'm going to blow up the moon. Unless you cater to my demands. And most of the time, those demands are not really something anyone really wants to do in general. But I think that's pretty par for the course, at least with having Eggman or, at least a visage of Eggman as the representative for the Emperor in this deck. All right, we'll put those guys to the side. I'm gonna move these off stage just because I think my camera likes to focus on those probably more than usual. Now, for the Animal Tarot versions 1 and 2, I was debating on putting version 2 out, but they're really just the same image, just in pure black and white. And really, it's the same image, so I feel like it would be just a little redundant if I brought them out. Ergo, we're going to be sticking with version 1, just because it's got a little bit more color. There's a couple of more things I can talk about with it. And the viewers watching at home or wherever, you can understand what my reasoning with things for a little bit. So, that said, this is probably my favorite version of the Empress and the Emperor. Now, yes, unfortunately, both of these cards are gendered, but stick with me here, because these two absolutely subvert your expectations with them. Now, especially with the Empress. So first of all, the Empress, the Empress, first and foremost, is a tiger. Now, yes, both of these are, wildcats that you really should not be messing with. But I'd almost make the argument that a tiger is more threatening than a lion. See, first of all, number one, lions sleep up to about, I think, 18 hours a day. I learned that, I can't remember where I learned that, but I've known that fact for a long time. Tigers, however, are much more active and they're much more solitary in the wild. They also know how to swim. So if you're in the middle of the African Serengeti, or heaven forbid you're at a wild safari at a theme park and somehow a lion ends up chasing you, I feel like if you start treading deep water, they're probably going to leave you alone. A tiger is not going to do that. Why? Because tigers love the water. That's number one. Number two, let me see. Let me bring this up just a little bit more. Okay, so my favorite thing is that she has managed to conquer the world. And if you want to get literal, I'd almost make the argument she's conquered a little bit of the galaxy as well. Again, not a whole lot, but definitely the entire planet. Again, tying in with that theme of, as above and so below, nature is all around us. It is the ground on our feet, it is the air we breathe, it is the stars we see in the sky. But the thing about her is that she quite literally has the whole world in her hands. Now, you're probably asking yourself, how in the hell did she get here? And this is where the fun begins. If you look at her cape, you'll notice there is a symbol of the Illuminati, and that is very clearly staring down at Earth. Now, I don't know a whole lot about secret societies. I found a couple of hermetic memes that I've thrown into the prologue slideshow, but I don't really know a whole lot about them. What I do know is that with most secret societies like this, especially the older ones such as Freemasons, they don't normally allow women. They don't normally allow people who were assigned female at birth. So the fact that this Empress was able to conquer the world via underground secret societal methods, things that are very subtle, no one even really notices, in a group specifically meant for men and people who are assigned male at birth, oh, this Empress is not someone I would want to mess with. She has conquered the world through means of, I'd make the argument of spirituality, through nature, and it's done so subtly that no one, literally no one, notices what she has done. But again, that's where that subverted expectation comes in. Now, with this deck's version of the Emperor, you'll notice this guy is a little more laid back here. Let me just move this just so we can focus a little bit better. And, well, I think until... There we are. Okay. This guy, I don't know about you, but this guy looks a little bit more relaxed, a little bit more lackadaisical. Yeah, he's a king, and yeah, he's an emperor, but number one, he only has 3 elements in the background behind him, earth, air, and fire, or earth, wind, and fire if you like 70s music. And you'll also notice on his crown, again, the motif of the different elements, albeit this time it's more so the alchemical symbols for them rather than anything else. So my argument for this guy kind of being a little bit more lazy, kind of slacking off, is this emperor, he only got the job because he was born. If circumstances changed, and if he was born to a pauper or, lower middle class, he wouldn't be here. He literally just had to be born, and now he's the god's special little boy. Why do I say that? Because he's literally holding his own DNA, his own genetic code that is on fire in his hand. he didn't get this job through working hard. He literally just got it by birthright. All he had to do was just exist, and now he's got this smug look of my papa drives Rolls Royce. I'm sorry, but if you can't hear that voice coming out of this guy, then I don't know what to tell you. But yeah, between that, it looks like he's more focused on his looks, his appearances, I'm the king, you have to listen to me. And I don't know, this does not really look like an emperor that's worth caring about, you know? Me personally, I have much more respect for the Empress who managed to crawl her way up in a secret society where women and AFABs are not allowed, mind you. So I'm sorry, I can't take this Emperor seriously. So anyway, thankfully, that is the last of the officially gendered versions of these cards. Now we're going to go into decks that kind of take that concept of gender and just throws it out the window. And we will start with the Forest NB Tarot. Now, with this version of this deck, all of the characters are officially non-binary. It would not be called the Forest NB Tarot otherwise. But that said, we are going to start with the creator. If I remember, yes, that is the creator. Again, the guidebook only really gives kind of key words, but we'll go over this together so I can explain my interpretation of when this card comes up. Again, it can still represent a mother or someone who is motherly, but it more so, at least to me, focuses more on the nature aspect of it. Most notably the emotional aspect. Again, you have this dog, specifically a Dalmatian, who is holding up their heart. It looks like they're about to start creating something. There's a lot of potential there. And because they're a creator, they can, kind of take their time with it. There's also a lot of, I think it's smoke. It's a little hard to tell. But again, I think that's kind of the mystique with nature is, because you can't see everything going on, because you don't know what's out there, that can leave things up to interpretation. That can leave things up to mystery. That can lead things up to, hey, I just did some world building. Here's how the nature works. Okay, well then, and it kind of just goes on and on and on with, diving deeper into creation, diving deeper into lore. Again, I don't see this card as literal, but creating and nature and emotion is more so the focus of this card. I still see aspects of this card being, motherly and caring, but it's less about gendered concepts and a lot more about putting in no uncertain terms, putting your heart into something. Now, unlike the creator, the protector, rather than showing himself off and saying, wow, look at how artistic and creative I am, this guy, or this wolf, is much more concrete. He's much more utilitarian. He's not showing himself off. I mean, we see his head and his hands, but it's less about, yes, I am the king, I rule this kingdom, I have this castle, but hey, look, I built this castle. I structured this order. Now, personally, I would have put in a fortress. I feel like that would probably have been a better representation. But the theme with this deck is that, it's whimsical, it's fantasy, it's very dainty. So, of course, rather than a fortress, a castle would probably fit the theme a lot better. And again, the fact that that their hands The fact that their hands are on the castle, at least to me, implies that, they built this castle with their own two hands or two paws. And they're, whatever is in there, whatever they are willing to protect, they are going to give it their all and make sure that whatever it is they're protecting is safe and secure and is not going to get destroyed or damaged either by you or by someone else. Now, the other thing, I guess this is my one critique with both of these cards. Here, let me bring these up just a little bit. My one critique with these cards is that I think the species should have been changed. It was a very interesting choice to have a dog and a wolf for this, but I think they should have been swapped, because with a wolf, yes, they're more threatening and they're scarier, at least in the general human consciousness, but a wolf doesn't necessarily protect. A wolf is a part of nature, whereas with a dog, dogs are wolves that have been domesticated over thousands and thousands of years. We as humans literally trained them to be protectors. A dog, I don't know, just to me, it doesn't seem like an animal that would create, rather it would protect. But I don't know, that's just kind of my interpretation with it. And I'm just kind of spitballing guesses here. My only theory as to why it's the dog is the creator and the wolf is protector is mostly because dogs are not as threatening. If you saw, I'd even make the argument, even if you saw a pit bull out running around with no leash or nothing, you probably wouldn't be as scared of that dog as you would a wolf, They're just, and believe me, I have experience, not a lot, but I do have experience interacting with wolves. You cannot, you can't trick them the way you would a dog. But that's kind of just my take on it. We're gonna go over my personally favorite deck out of all of them. And then after that, we're gonna take a little bit of a short break. But here we go. This is the Darisa Lomish Tarot. I am so bad with the names. I'm just gonna call it the Lomish Darisa. But anyway, so with these cards, in my opinion, they're definitely very well rendered. But I feel like they kind of reiterate the very similar points that most any other typical version of Empress and Emperor do. So in this version, which is known as Slumber the Parturient, it's funny, I actually had to look up what that word meant, and all Parturient means is just someone who gives birth. And it's such a non-gendered name that I had never even heard of this word until I purchased this deck. So, but that said, it has a lot of similar motifs. There's an abundance of grain. There's, there's a more feminine character who, if I remember from the guidebook correctly, I believe this character is about to be giving birth. And I would almost make the argument that that they are on the inside of the building that the sire, or the Emperine, is standing in front of. Now again, obviously it's not the same window, but maybe probably off the card, there's a window or something where we can see that happening. Again, I read this card as less, oh, I'm the king, I'm the Emperine, you have to do what I say. And I see this more as like the opening number from The Lion King. It's again, the movie's like 30 something years old. If you haven't seen it by now, what are you doing? But I kind of see this character as more of a Mufasa-esque kind of leader. Wherein they're very just, they're very noble, they know the ins and outs of their kingdom, and it looks like they're about to make a declaration that yes, my child is about to be born soon. And we are witnessing a great moment in history. I don't know. I'm kind of just spitballing words in his mouth. Again, these are absolutely very unique takes on these, which again, I really do enjoy. I love it when people do stuff like this. But at least with these two cards, it kind of feels more to me like they're just kind of reiterating what the Empress and Emperor already stand for. Now then, we're going to take a little bit of a break because I need to get a few things. Number one. Number two, I need a drink because my throat is very dry. And number three, I have to get a deck ready for the querent that I'm going to read for. So, yeah, we are going to be right back. right. Welcome back, chat. Did you miss me? Well, as I'm recording this, I miss you guys. But, um, I before we do the actual reading, I also wanted to highlight a couple of new, I guess, card reading updates with myself. Let me just put the music back on just a little bit here. There we go. Okay, um, so these next couple of decks, I have actually only been working with for, at the longest, about 2 weeks. But, um, uh, so at least these two decks are relatively new. A friend of mine had actually been getting into tarot because of me, and because of him, I decided, hey, maybe I should start getting back into Oracle again. And that's kind of what I did. Um, and I had so much fun now that I've developed my skills over the past couple of years. See, before I got these decks, I had a few others, which I've shown them before on stream. But I wasn't good with them. I didn't understand card reading the way that I do now. So I kind of put them on the shelf for a couple of years, said, I'll get back to these when I start getting good with tarot. And, there's times where I even impress myself, which, at least for me, is not all that hard to do. But, consider these a more coming soon, I suppose. Oh, pardon me. But I may be offering these, later down the line if anyone's interested in them. Now, these first two, they're technically supposed to be synonymous with each other. This deck is the Forest of Enchantment Tarot, and this deck is, well, as the box states, the Forest of Enchantment Oracle. Now, the tarot version has been out, I'm going to say, for a good couple of years at this point. But the Oracle has only been out, I'm going to say, for maybe about a month or two. And this was technically a birthday gift, a hatch day gift to me from me. And since using it, I've been having a lot of fun with this Oracle deck. It's been giving me insight into things in ways that I had never really considered. The theme, now, both of these, their themes are, it's a forest, it's fairy tale. We're gonna change the song because I'm not super crazy about this one. There we go. Okay, elevator music, very good. But this one tends to focus a little bit more on the fairy tale, the fantasy, the whimsy of it, whereas the Oracle deck actually adds in several pagan themes. You'll notice on the cover, it's a coven. It's a coven of 3 witches specifically. I know there's also a card for the Oak and Holly King. There's a card for the Wild Hunt. There's even a card for Foxfire and a dragon, which I didn't even realize was there. When I started working with this deck, this deck basically told me, happy hatch day. So that kind of, that kind of worked itself out. But that said, I kind of want to work with both of these cards in tandem. It's just the issue is that, well, again, I purchased this deck back when I was more of a novice, so I wasn't very good at reading decks. So again, this was another deck that I unfortunately had to shelve, and I'm gonna try to say this as playfully as possible. Because I left it alone for so long, I'm not gonna say it's got a couple of bugs because it's just a deck of cards, but there's things that I need to work on with it. But later down the line, I do want to offer the Forest of Enchantment system. I do want to offer that as an option for you guys, later down the line when this deck starts to calm down a little bit. Now, the other deck I had only gotten this deck set up, I think, just last night. Or not even just last night, but just yesterday evening. And the theme with this deck is, it is, well, like my persona, technically, it is all dragons. And not just dragons, but dragons with a herald. And in this case, a herald is usually the person that a dragon is with. Now, what's interesting about this deck is the way that you read it. It's almost like drawing two cards at once. You have advice from the herald, who's going to have a more down-to-earth, a more literal concept, a more human concept that is something that you can relate to. And the dragon, which would be more of a draconic, archetypal meaning behind it. That said, I have not needed to use the guidebook for this deck at all. As soon as I got this deck as soon as I set this deck up, you know, my probably my favorite card in the whole deck came out. So this is a pretty good deck. That said, it has not even been 24 hours since this deck was fully set up. But later, probably even later tonight after this recording, I'm going to talk to some people that I'm good buddies with who kind of got me into all this. I'm going to talk to some people about how to get this deck to calm down, and if I'm working in the correct way with this deck as well. Again, their advice, I absolutely 100% trust, mostly no question. You know, they're still a person, they still have faults, they still have and do things that, you know, I disagree with, but that's every person. You know, you could be the greatest person in the world, and, you know, if there's one thing different, someone's gonna have an issue with it. But again, that's everybody. So, if you would like a double reading with the Forest of Enchantment set, or you would like a reading with the dragons, I will be setting those up relatively soon. I'm gonna say maybe 2-3 weeks, probably about a month, before I've worked with these things enough to say, okay, I'm ready to work with them. I'm ready to offer working with these decks to the public. Oh my goodness, excuse me. Anyway, so, all that being said, we're gonna move all this stuff to the side. Oh, excuse me. And we are going to set up for the last third of the stream, recording, whatever you'd like to call it. Now, I'm not gonna spoil the surprise too much, but, I had a little bit of money to scrape up. I had a little bit to, you know, scrounge up and save, and I commissioned an artist. I'm sorry, I shouldn't say artist. I mean, he is, but regardless, I commissioned quite possibly one of my favorite graphic designers of, I'm gonna say, the 20th century. And that is White Fox Designs. Now, if you don't know him by name, that's okay, because you don't really need to. I actually first found him because he was the original logo designer for the game Amanda the Adventurer. It's a really, honestly, if you enjoy FNAF style story driven horror games, it's really fun. It takes the concept of, I'm going to say, Dora the Explorer, or even, like, I want to say Sesame Street, you know, the typical child-friendly, hi, I'm the major hero, and this is my sidekick, and we go on adventures. You know, it takes that, and it turns it into a horror theme. White Fox did the logo not just for them, but a whole myriad of other furry businesses. Off of the top of my head, the only one I can remember is the Prize Counter. And their theme is, a 1980s arcade. If you've ever been to a Chuck E. Cheese, you play the games, you get the tickets, you go to the prize counter, you trade them in, and you get a prize, that kind of thing. Oh, I can't remember the one furry's name, but that person has made a ton of avatars, and that logo was also made by White Fox. So, if you're putting two and two together, shush, don't spoil the surprise. But, as in exchange for a little bit of a discount, I offered to do a card reading for him. And I almost was going to assume he wasn't going to, I don't want to say take the offer, but I almost assumed he wouldn't do it. But he was surprisingly cordial, and he said, sure, I'd love to get one. So I asked him all of my usual questions. I asked him, okay, I asked him the name he wanted to go by, what deck he wanted to use, and if he had a question. He didn't necessarily give me a question, so I'm treating this as just a general reading. And unless there is more information that comes out in the reading, I'll keep this for now at a half cross, mostly because if this relates to a more mundane situation, I usually keep it as a half cross. Now the way that a half cross works, you have the center, conflict, as above, so below, past, and future. That's what I consider to be the half cross. But if more information is needed, or if I personally want to find out more, or if there's more to the situation that isn't making a whole lot of sense, then I will add the spaces 7, 8, 9, and 10. Or however much room I have on here. But again, it kind of depends. But yeah, let's get this reading started. Give me a general reading for White Fox. General reading for White Fox. General reading for White Fox. Come on. General. Okay. All right. Calm down. Be calm. You're fine. No one's in any danger. No one's in a hurry. We're fine. All right. So, let's see what we are looking at here. Okay. All right. So, first and foremost, any cards that are in this space kind of represent either who the querent is or, things to help establish the reading. And for this reading, I got the Vizier of Ground and the Knight of Fire. In any other deck, this is the Queen of Pentacles and the Knight of Wands. These two cards tell me that where I'm using you in reference to White Fox, but where you are right now, you're in a pretty decent spot. You seem to be a very grounded person, but again, it's as obvious as your social page. You definitely have a lot of talent. Whenever a Knight of Wands in any deck comes out, I always see that as someone who's incredibly talented and, more importantly, has a lot of gumption to pursue that talent. Now, let's see what the main conflict is. Okay, so I guess this is more of a suffering from success problem, but this is the 8 of Ground. In any other deck, this would be the 8 of Pentacles. This card tells me that you are working like overtime. You put so much effort into what you do, And yeah, it pays off for you, obviously, but you put so much time and energy. I'm thinking maybe you should take a break. If not now, then, sooner or later. Yes, okay. So this is the Knight of Swords, or excuse me, Knight of Wind. In any other deck, this would be the Knight of Swords. This card tells me that for the past however long, you've always been very gung-ho about your talents, your pursuits, your work ethic. Oh, excuse me. You're a very act before you think kind of person. Which again, please do not discredit yourself. You've worked on so much stuff that it's gotten to a point now where, like, I can recognize your stuff, even just out in the wild, I haven't played Amanda the Adventure, but it's probably one of my favorite storyline driven games. And the fact that you specifically had a hand in it, that is really cool. I mean, like, you could tell people that at parties. Oh yeah, I worked on the logo for Amanda the Adventure. Like, that in and of itself is a really good achievement in my book. Anyways, moving on. So this space is, I call it as above. It is the thing that you are consciously aware of. The thing that, again, is also obvious, but less about the querent and more about the situation. So let's take a look at what that might be. Okay. So for this space, we got the 5 of Fire, which would be the 5 of Wands in any other deck. We got the Healer, or Temperance. And we got 7 of Wind, or in this case, it is the 7 of Swords. These cards tell me that either you're worried, or there may be other clients who are telling you, oh yeah, no, don't worry, I'll get you your money. And, they want to be on your queue, but they don't really have it, or there's some sort of way that you're trying to be undermined. And the most obvious way that I can see through these, actually my heart's kind of not pounding in like an emergency medical way, but like a almost a nervous anxietal kind of way. I almost worry that, like, people might be taking advantage of you. But because, you're a very you're a very cordial person, this is a business. This is, I'm not saying life or death, but this is your livelihood. So you want to be as compromising with people as possible, so that way you can have more work coming in. And again, there is nothing wrong with that. Not in the slightest. But, that's kind of another thing that, again, people who have been on the internet for a long time, maybe you know this already, maybe not, but one of the big lessons about the internet is, what's the phrase? Cutting the wheat through the trough. Knowing how to vet people. Not me, but people very close to me, I know, need to learn that lesson eventually. But let's see what are some things we can work on. Let's see what are some things we can do. This space here, I call it So Below. These are ideas that maybe you haven't considered, or alternative things you can do, or possibly even things you may have rejected and haven't given a single thought about since. But let's see what we got. All right. Yeah. So this kind of goes into that theme of vetting people. So this card is in the world of the Darisa Lomish. This is the deity Reku. obviously, as shown, they're a very masculine deity. They're a very, they're all about smithing and forging, and I would even make the argument fire as well. But this is the stand-in for the strength card, and at least with everything that we have so far, this card tells me that vetting people is not exactly one of your strongest suits. I mean, again, that's okay. There's gajillions of people who are more than happy to work with you. Trust me, I always have a working theory that if someone is very talented and money wasn't an option, you would have work forever. But that said, don't be afraid to say no. If there's a logo that maybe you're uncomfortable with, or if there's a client who's kind of being a problem, or if you've done the work already for someone and they've said, "Oh, I'll pay you back, I'll pay you back, I'll pay you back," you need to, sooner or later, you're gonna need to stand your ground and say, "No, that's not fair to me. I need this money. This is my livelihood, and you need to pay me accordingly." Or at least that's what I'm getting. Now, for everyone's favorite spot, the future. I It's not that I don't put stock in it, but I try to look at cards in this space as realistically as I can. I always see this spot as the most logical, and in terms of a time frame, the furthest out is usually about 3 months, give or take. But again, let's see what we got. Okay. Okay, that is interesting. So these two cards, in this deck, it is the Knight of Ground. In this case, it is in this deck, it is the Knight of Ground. But in any other deck, this would be the Knight of Pentacles. And as well as the Ten of Wind. Excuse me. In any other deck, this would be the Ten of Swords. I almost want to say this is like a specific person who probably within the next 3 months is gonna come in, and I'm not gonna say take advantage. I really don't want, I don't want to word it that harshly, but this person, and I'm gonna say maybe not necessarily young, but like young adult, somewhere between their like 20s and 30s. They're gonna come in and they're gonna say, "Oh, hey, you have this really cool staff. Well, not anymore. It's mine now. I want it. It's mine." And I'm not gonna say you're gonna have to fight for it, but it's a little hard to see. But if you look at their arms, the symbol for this suit are those little V shapes, and they're kind of piercing into both characters. They're piercing into both of their skins. So I'm gonna chalk this up to being a person specifically. If this was more so an event, I would say then it would be, say, maybe 3 or 5 of Pentacles, or a specifically numbered card. But the fact that this card came out, that's very interesting. So that said, I would like to find out more information about this person. So we're gonna draw a couple more cards, and I'm gonna put my little cryptid sign. We'll put you right there. Okay. Tell me more about this person. Tell me more about this person. Tell me. Can I get one more? Yes, I got one more. Very good. Okay. So, again, as I stated earlier, this is the second half of the Celtic Cross. These are more so external themes. This space here, again, in my experience reading these cards, it's usually advice from the deck, from spirit, the universe, the gods, deity, whatever higher power you believe in. Otherwise, it's just, the law of probability. So with that said, let's see what advice we have. Ooh, interesting. Okay. So the cards that I have, well, first is the Six of Ground. In any other deck, this would be the Six of Pentacles. This person is this person is going to see. Excuse me. This person is going to seem very charitable. I almost want to say, hey, you have, let me throw a lot. Alrighty, so, my apologies for that. I think I really need to get a new storage space. Anyway, so, where were we? So this person, I would almost say this would be maybe some sort of business proposition, or, someone telling you, hey, I'm willing to give you like a gajillion dollars. I'm willing to give you a lot of money if you do this, if you do this specific project for me. And this card is in any other deck, this is the Page of Cups, but in this one, it is the Princess of Water. All these characters are not necessarily non-binary, but rather non-gender. Gender is just not a thing with them. This person, I'm sure you've had clients in the past where they've said, oh, I have this really great idea, and I'm willing to give you a whole lot of money for this, and this, that, and the other thing, and again, judging by this character's pose, I would say wait. Or wait until, you physically get that money. Or not physically, but, over PayPal or Venmo or, however everybody gets money these days. But, yeah, again, I would say these cards are telling me that you should wait. But there's a lot of, or they're promising a lot of opportunity, but they're not going to give you that money immediately. Now, for this space, this is for the biggest obstacles. What are some things that are preventing you from your goals, or the resolution that everyone wants? What are the things that are preventing the querent from getting there? Okay. Alright. Interesting. Okay. So, I don't know if you're... So, I'm not sure if you're in the tarot communities, or at least the modern tarot communities, but, this card is called Broken Sedu, and in any other deck, this would be the Tower. I don't know about you, but this does not look like a very pretty picture. It's very apocalyptic. Yeah, we'll hold off on that one for now. But the other card that I pulled up, which is interesting, is the Knight of Water. In any other deck, this would be the Knight of Cups. The biggest obstacles, in my opinion, is that whoever this person, this client, whoever this person may be, not only are they very emotional, but this seems like the kind of person who would weaponize their emotions. They are, this character is literally holding a whip, and I don't know about you, but they look kind of threatening. or at least more threatening than the Princess of Water. Um, I again, if if sometime soon you come across a client who's promising you, this, that, and the other thing, um, um, and you decide to take it on, it's probably not gonna work out in your favor. And, just from these four cards already, it sounds like you're gonna have a bad time, to quote Undertale. Alright, that said, this space represents both your hopes and fears. I akin this space to the iconic Clint Eastwood, careful what you wish for, punk. That type of situation. But, let's see what we have. Okay, that tracks. So, this is the Knot. In any other deck, this is the Judgment card. Again, this can be perceived as a negative card, but again, not only with the themes of action, but, even though it's from the point of view of you about to, do what you're doing, no one's there to watch you. No one's going to see you do this. That's the thing. And so you don't have to put your head through it if you don't want to. Yeah, things are now like really complicated, but there's still this chance for you to walk away. In my opinion, again, I know you don't like using the word talented, but you have a lot of skill. You have a lot of agency. There's a lot of creativity in there. And again, your main goal is, you want to pursue your dreams. And trust me, I get it. I've been there, even back in the early 2010s, that's exactly where I was. If I knew you were around, even, 10, 15 years ago, you probably would have been a big inspiration for, I mean, not that you're not now, but, it's that kind of thing. But that said, again, that's kind of the beauty of, as far as I'm aware, you're doing freelance, but that's kind of the beauty of it. You don't have to take on this client if you don't want to. And I guess that might be your biggest fear, I guess, is having to take that leap to say, no, you're being a really weird client. You've already done enough damage to me. Not literally, of course. You've already done enough damage to me. I don't want to work with you anymore. And again, I'm sure you've had clients who were like this. But again, the way that I read these cards is most likely, most reasonable outcome. Or at least that's the mindset I go in with this. And now finally is the future. My mantra with this space is, if all things come to pass, this is the most likely course. So let's take a look. All right, so this is the in this deck it is the Vizier of Fire, but in any other deck this is the Queen of Wands. This is going to give you, not necessarily just gumption, with your career, with your goals, but it's going to teach you a new skill of discernment. And again, I know you've gone through this moment of discernment before. I've skimmed through your TOS code of conduct with working with you, so I feel like whatever this event may bring, this might make you all the more knowledgeable, all the more wiser, all the more, I don't want to say easier to vet, but this experience will help signal to you, I'd almost say intuitively, who's a client who's going to have a legitimate business or a legitimate group, or, who's going to have something where my logo will be used, and who just wants art and, they're going to string me along. it's going to be a lot easier for you to find out those things when and if this experience happens. Again, take it from a fellow freelance artist. It usually gets easier to spot them, not necessarily as you get older, but as you gain more experience. I'm not sure how long you've been doing what you're doing, but again, this is just a skill that will kind of develop over time. But yeah, that's pretty much your entire reading. White Fox, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, complaints, whatever, you know how to contact me. But for everyone else, yeah, that's pretty much everything that I wanted to cover for this stream, or recorded stream, excuse me. And yeah, I can't really think of much else. But I hope everyone who is here listening, watching, and, hearing me babble for how long? Like, a whole hour and a half about all kinds of cards and crazy esoteric things like this. I hope you guys have a wonderful week, wonderful rest of your weekend, wonderful rest of whatever. And hopefully I will get this fixed, and I will see you guys, hopefully next time. Yeah, see ya.